Okay, recording. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
Great. Here we go. Today, we are going to be talking about inclusive mindset and leadership and tools for learning at home and online. Everything that we're expected to do at this moment in time. So inclusion itself is a mindset, and whether a child is in the classroom or at home, the belief that you can reach your students is absolutely critical. However, we can support teachers to understand and to develop their confidence that wherever their students are, they are able to be reached by that teacher is a crucial mindset always, but at this particular moment in time especially. Now we understand that the current mindset of anyone working in a school right now, principals, teachers, our wonderful interventionists, all school staff, this might be the actual mindset of those people. So I understand that crisis has created a situation where people are unable to perhaps be in the mindset that they would like to be in. And most teachers went to school to learn how to teach the children in the classroom in front of them, and took them a few years to figure that out. And now they're expected to do things differently without a lot of training and without a lot of practice. And it's just overwhelming. So one of the things that we are going to speak about today is the concept of universal design for learning, principles and practices that would allow teachers to move away from creating variations in lessons and help principals to be able to enable teachers to think about the bigger picture. Teachers often think about just what's right in front of them, which of course they should. Their students, whether they're in front of them on the screen or in front of them in the classroom, that's what we want, right? But helping them to be able to ease their own workload by thinking about how they're delivering the education a little bit differently, that's what we're after. So who are we? My name is Colleen McCoy-Cejka, and I am a co-author for the book Setting the Table. This is a book that Crystal Brooks and I co-authored and published about a year ago on developing programs within particularly Catholic schools for students with exceptionalities. So it's one thing to be able to develop the knowledge, the skills, and the dispositions appropriate to welcome students with different learning styles, with disabilities, and other challenges into your school. It's another thing to develop the programs that will help them to be successful. So that's what our book is about. I am a former classroom teacher. I'm a former principal and a former assistant superintendent. And I'm also an advocate for inclusive programs in Catholic schools because I have a neurotypical child and I also have a neurodiverse child. And I advocate for inclusive environments because I understand the importance of neurodiverse and neurotypical students learning together and learning to be classmates and friends to make it a better world. And I'm here today with my co-presenter, Crystal Brooks.
Thanks, Colleen. It's really a pleasure to be here with everyone. So as Colleen described, we co-authored the book Setting the Table. We both share the passion for ensuring that all students are welcome at our Catholic schools across the country. Currently, I am a practitioner at the high school level. I'm working with high school students every day from a variety of backgrounds and learning challenges and learning strengths. And it's a real joy. My background, I am trained as a speech language pathologist and have a background in special education. And I've worked in a variety of environments within those roles, including at the state level, private clinics, private schools, as well as public schools. So I'm always learning in these different environments and through my colleagues, but most importantly through the students that I continue to serve every day. So we hope collectively to bring our experiences and our opportunities to be with students, to be with administrators, to help enrich your practice as well.
So what to expect? As I said, we're going to talk about UDL and why and how to apply them in this current moment in time. Diocesan and school level leadership framework and strategies for inclusion. And we are going to show you a live binder full of resources for exceptional learners that includes information on distance learning and student engagement. We'll show you how to navigate that and what's most relevant and important right now. Crystal.
So, thank you. So a lot of what we're going to be exploring today is really based on universal design for learning. Universal design is based in science. It's based in a great deal of research. And it comes from the belief that if we start with providing a learning environment that meets the needs of all students, we will therefore ensure that students who struggle, students who are gifted, students everywhere along that continuum are getting what they need for their academic success. And we do that through flexibility. Flexibility in the way our information, our content is presented, flexibility in how we engage our students, and flexibility in how students are able to demonstrate their learning in the classroom.
One of the things to consider when you think about, well, why do I have to change my mindset? There's so many reasons for that. One of the best explanations comes from Todd Rose. So I don't know if you are familiar with the book, The End of Average, or Todd Rose's TED Talk, The Myth of Average. It's in our live binder, so we can show that to you. The link is down there at the bottom of the page if you want to take a picture of that. And what Todd Rose explains is that there is no such thing as an average learner. And I know that when I was in teacher school way back when I first entered the classroom, teaching to the middle was acceptable. It was something that was talked about in my training as a teacher, teaching to the middle, teach to the average, and then you differentiate for the high and the low. And that's actually what we're trying to move away from. And part of that is understanding that there are all of these different aspects, memory and language and vocabulary and cognitive ability and perception, where every single human being is on a continuum. So to find people who actually are in the middle on all of that, and to assume that most people are in the middle on all of those things, that is not true. That is a myth. So I would highly recommend that if you are not familiar with Todd Rose's book or TED Talk, you look into that and share that.
Definitely. So a little bit more about universal design. As I said, it has a great deal of science and research behind it. And the folks who are really they've provided our foundation of learning in this realm are CAST. And CAST is located in Boston. Shout out to my home state of Massachusetts, but they are the premier, I would say, educators of all educators and those of us in the field of education when it comes to UDL. And their website, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there, really provides such in-depth exploration of these three concepts that I highly recommend you check them out. We have a lot of resources in the live binder as they relate to universal design as well. But certainly to go directly to the source is never a bad idea. They also do yearly conferences if you have the means to send folks to Boston for those events. So with universal design, these guidelines really ensure that we're starting with engagement. If a student is engaged, then they can be ready to learn. So that really gets to the why or the so what of learning. You want to make sure that students are active participants in their learning. And there are several ways teachers can go about doing that in the classroom. And truly the goal of engagement is to ensure that we are producing expert learners who are are motivated and purposeful in their learning. The other guideline includes representation, and you can see in these pictures exactly where in the brain we are activating. If you're kind of interested in neurology or a brain nerd like I like to believe I am, it's really interesting to look at the neuroscience behind learning and the importance of representing what you are teaching in a variety of ways to students so that the brain has multiple opportunities to learn that information. So this ensures that our expert learners are resourceful and knowledgeable. We do that by presenting things verbally. We do that by providing visuals. We do that by providing videos. We let the students touch and feel things whenever we can with manipulatives. So that's how learning is represented. And then the action and expression guideline really speaks to how are you going to know that the student has learned that? How do you know that you have prepared an expert learner who is strategic and goal-directed in their learning? How will they represent their knowledge to you? And that could be a variety of modalities. Project-based learning is a great tool to employ when considering universal design, as well as just getting the students to share with you how they demonstrate their learning the best. Students know themselves pretty well. So when students are at home, of course, it's really difficult to know if they're truly engaged. Some students can be so bold, I would dare say, as to just turn their camera off or mute the teacher and kind of go about doing something else that was not part of the lesson plan for the day. And they feel that they can do that when there's no connection to the teacher or the content or the class, and when there's little communication directly towards them in that one-to-one way. So these are the two really tricks that we want teachers to employ when considering student engagement, specifically when students are at home. That connection starts with the student directly and having a good understanding of what their home environment is like. What are these social and emotional difficulties that they may be having at this time? Did they recently become a caregiver for younger siblings? Or did mom or dad, are they home more when they used to be at work? Or maybe they're at work more when they used to be home. So knowing what that student's home environment is really, really important when we're teaching in an online environment. And also having a good understanding from that student's perspective, what does their success look like? Are they striving to be an A student? Or because of everything that they've got going on in their world right now, are they going to be personally satisfied with B's or C's? And knowing that can really ensure that the teacher and the student are on the same page. And of course, that happens with communication. When you're online, you actually have a few more opportunities to communicate that you typically wouldn't use in a classroom environment. If you're in Google Classrooms or if you're using Zoom or Microsoft Teams, there's often a private chat that you can use to interact with the student. And you can just check in and say, hey, how you doing today? And just ask them, invite them one-on-one to share what's going on in their life or where they're struggling or what they may need some help on. So that communication opportunity that wasn't there for perhaps a student that has a language disorder and wasn't really comfortable coming up with the right words to use when asking a question is now available in the online environment. So knowing what works best for that student and what doesn't will be a very important part of what communication will work. You want to make sure that we're offering praise and encouragement and also providing accountability for students to keep them on track and help keep them goal directed. And that will help us to identify those strengths and areas for growth.
So when thinking about leadership in the context of creating the mindset, creating the appropriate mindset, and encouraging schools to not forget, even though we are in crisis and we're putting a lot of emphasis right now on social emotional health, we understand that we cannot abandon curriculum and instruction. So with added pressure on principals this year. Principals always having a difficult job, but one more layer, they can only take so much upon their shoulders. So we do have to remember that the principal does have to set the tone in these situations. And these are just a few things that the principal has to keep in mind when it comes to, please don't forget about making sure that our students with learning challenges are getting the supports that they need. And the principal has to make sure that they are the cheerleader and the agent who is leading in word and action when it comes to remembering not to leave students behind or focusing on the middle. The principal is the person that's putting the right people in the right seats around the school to make sure that this is happening. Is there an intervention? Is there to lend extra support to the teachers in this case? If the district is not, for whatever reason, able to provide, if there's an LEA that you usually work with that is not able to provide one-on-one therapy with students this year because that you would normally get, how is that void being filled? So just thinking about those things, who are the people that are there to be the supports for the students, understanding and defending the Catholic mission and its role in education, why we are doing what we're doing, why it's important to remain in the appropriate mindset throughout all of this. Inherently, the principal has to believe that all children can learn, even in this environment. Through strong family partnership, almost any student can receive a Catholic education, whether in person or through distance learning, with the appropriate supports and the appropriate mindset. And then finally, it's still up to the principal to evaluate the pulse of the community, respond to the dispositions appropriately by forming other administrators, teacher staff, students and families. In this case, it's helping the teachers to remember to make sure they're reaching all of their students. At the diocesan level, so if you are a superintendent, assistant superintendent, there are some obstacles that can be removed. We have to remember that in an inclusive community, the leadership is always going to set the tone. It's not just the leader at the school, because the leaders at the school, just what I talked about with the principals having one more layer of expectation upon them, they have to know that there is support from above, not just expectation. There does have to be expectation. There also has to be support. So leadership at the top in a diocese can remove some obstacles. These are just some suggestions of things that have worked, and that is developing general guidance for schools so that there is a collective expectation for all schools throughout the diocese. Developing a team of professional practitioners that are willing to volunteer their services and expertise in this particular moment in time. That might even be more important if districts are not allowing for the supports that they've been able to give in the past with therapies for students. Provide professional development at diocesan events or sponsor PD if there is a way that you can, as a diocese, not just leave it to the principals to make sure their teachers are trained to be able to provide quality online instruction, because let's face it, the case may be that moving forward, this really may be the new normal. There may always be an expectation that when children are sick or there's an issue, it's not just going to be this year, but we could be setting a new standard for the future. So who's going to train the teachers to meet that expectation? When the support comes from the tippy top, it's much more helpful. Networking with other diocesan educational leaders. So if you are a superintendent or assistant superintendent, a curriculum director, we're very new on, there are no best practices in distance learning in Catholic schools yet. We're developing those, right? So networking is extremely important right now. You being the hub of the wheel, someone in the diocesan office being the hub of the wheel, being that support to make sure that the the schools understand what the expectation is for inclusion and not dropping the ball, not abandoning curriculum and instruction, even when we are putting emphasis on crisis in the moment. Very important. And gather data and use it to understand the story of your diocese, understand what's going on in your diocese, whether you have 5 schools or you have 105 schools in your diocese. Data can tell a clear picture. So how many students are still online? How many students are in the seats? How many students are moving in and out of the school from week to week? How many of those students have IEPs? All of that good stuff. But knowing the data will help you to be able to understand the story. So we are going to jump into the live finder now, and just bear with me for 1 second because I want to make sure that you are able to hear audio. Okay, we are good to go. We're going to play a video, and I wanted to make sure you could hear it. So in our live finder, this is what it looks like. And anything that we talk about today is highlighted in green. So you can, again, take a picture of the URL on the top of the page there, and this will get you in. There's no passcode. It's an open link, so anyone can go in and you can share it with whoever you would like. And we're going to start off with, let's find it here. Where is my
UDL?
Student engagement. Oh, is that it? Or no, I have to go into the UDL. That's where it is. Yep, see, thank God for the green tabs, right? Okay, so we're gonna do this is a quick 3-minute video on UDL. So if this is a new concept to you, or if you want to use this video to help school leaders or teachers understand the mindset of UDL, this is a great place to start.
Imagine you went into a big clothes store and all that was on sale was one type of outfit, in one size, with no thought given to different individual body shapes or personalities. That would be crazy, right? Expecting everyone to be able to fit into the same size and express themselves in the same colour and style? Yet in many cases, that's exactly what is happening in our education system. When it comes to learning, variability is the rule, not the exception, and our college campuses are now grappling with the demands of an increasingly diverse cohort of learners, with increasing numbers of international students, students from different cultural and socio-economic backgrounds, mature students, and students with disabilities. Despite this, curriculums are still designed for the mythical average learner, and all are expected to engage and learn on the same terms. Not enough flexibility is built in at the design stage to give all students equal opportunities to learn in ways that play to their own strengths. So, how can our institutions respond to these challenges? Enter Universal Design for Learning, or UDL for short. UDL is an educational framework that guides the design of learning goals, materials, methods and assessments, as well as the policies surrounding these curricular elements with the diversity of learners in mind. The framework was developed by US organisation CAST and is based on research in the field of neuroscience. It promotes 3 core principles for educators to build into their teaching practice, calling on them to provide students with multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. The framework includes a set of guidelines on how you can turn these principles into practice. For example, by fostering collaboration with the introduction of group work with clear goals, roles, and responsibilities. By using different types of media to support learning and ensuring that all materials are accessible. And by providing a choice of assessment instruments while maintaining robust learning outcomes. You are probably already including some UDL elements in your practice without realising it, and there's much more to explore. So don't be afraid to let Universal Design for Learning give you a new lens through which to look at your teaching and learning practice and help you to better reach all of your students. For more information and resources, visit ahead.ie/UDL.
Okay. So again, the support from the top can come in the form of lots of resources, right? So this is one way that you can provide, whether you're a principal or a diocesan leader, using either bits and pieces of information from this live binder or just sharing the live binder with people in your schools, in your dioceses. This is one way to show support by providing resources, by providing background information. And this can also, there's so much information in here that can be used for professional development. So please don't be shy and share this with whoever you think it's going to benefit. A lot of these are teaching resources. So not a whole lot of use for some of this at the diocesan level, but definitely important to share something like this, for example. This is, in the student engagement tab, I've jumped into something called Crash Course. This is an engagement tool that can be used in the classroom or for distance learning. And especially if you're in a situation where you have students who are, some of them are at home and some of them are in the classroom, video can be engaging no matter where you are. What I did was I watched some of the videos in various sections of this resource and found them, even though it looks very elementary, it is not very elementary. So this is great for probably 5th grade and up, I would say. Some of the information is technical, it's very well explained, but some of the topics are very meaty topics as well. So this can be used all the way up to adult learning. So a really great resource with engaging videos that are anywhere from the ones that I watched 8 minutes to 15 minutes. The only thing that I would, of course, caution is to make sure, especially if you're showing anything in the sciences. I know at least many of the schools that I have dealt with, you want to be very careful how you're presenting your science information. And if it is too secular for that particular community, you just want to be careful how it's being presented. So of course, as always, review any videos that you would want to be sharing with students and with parents. But this is a really great resource for engagement online or in person. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next one that we're going to go to is.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, we wanted to really highlight these high incidence learning challenges that we have in our Catholic schools across the country, right? So whether within your diocese or your school, whether you are actively providing a Catholic school version of a 504 plan, for example, at my school, we call them a student support plan. And before we actively started writing these plans, there was an acknowledgement that these students are already in our school. They're already in our classrooms. Students have ADHD. Some parents choose to disclose it when they enroll, some do not. So we're going to talk about some of the resources in the live binder that are available for these high incidence disabilities that teachers can go right to. And principals can use this to say, we know you're already doing some of this. We know you're using best practices with teaching. But when it comes to engaging a student with ADHD, for example, let's make sure that when you're doing a writing prompt, whether in an English class, a theology class, or even history, make sure that you can work in personalizing this whenever possible. Kids love to talk about themselves, they really do. They love to share their experiences. They love to share what they know. And whenever you can personalize a writing prompt or a writing essay, you're going to probably get more from that student than you would otherwise. ADHD and written expression are they affect one another. So a student who has ADHD, for example, is going to rush through a writing prompt. They're not going to give it a lot of attention or thought or even proofreading and editing. So when it's personalized, they have a little bit more skin in the game and they're likely to invest more time in that. Another resource that you can use both online and in the classroom is a visual timer. There's a lot of great digital timers that you can post inside your classroom, even giving students the opportunity to see, we're going to be doing this particular task for 10 minutes, and then there's a countdown clock in the corner of the screen. That's a good visual cue so that they understand how long that 10 minutes is and when they need to get ready to transition to the next event or the next task for the day. Drawing, again, kind of going back to writing, using a storyboard to tell a story. You can still include all of the different narrative elements, but getting a pen or a pencil and some paper and really just start to draw things out is a great way to get rid of writer's block, to have them share some experiences, again, in a different visual way than using words or using language. And they can start to really understand what it is they want to include when getting ready to write. So drawing is fantastic. And then audiobooks. This is another one we're going to highlight in this list. Audiobooks are fantastic. Nowadays with technology and Chrome extensions, you can really make any website, any PDF, any Google Doc, any Word document be text to speech. So the computer will read it aloud to you. The voices are becoming much more natural. They're a lot less mechanical than they used to be. And certainly audio books or audio files you can always get through Audible, Learning Ally, or even the local library. I know I borrow audiobooks frequently to listen to on long hikes and such when the weather isn't 100 degrees here in Arizona. So audiobooks, audio text to speech is just super accessible right now. We want to make sure we're using that as frequently as possible. So speaking of Chrome extensions, we won't go into all of them here, but they are linked directly to the live binder, and they're super easy to include on a toolbar. Read and Write is an awesome tool, and there's even YouTube videos that will kind of get into all of the great ways that it can help make note-taking easier, help preparing for presentations easier, and learning vocabulary, all kinds of tools. And then the screen shader is another wonderful extension that you can add to a Chrome toolbar that will color your screen with a beautiful orange hue. It looks like an Arizona sunset, and it helps reduce the fatigue that the eyes experience after being online for 6 hours a day. So I would definitely say for your students who you know are sitting in front of that computer all day long, having that screen shader as a Chrome extension could be a real benefit, especially if they're complaining of headaches or eye fatigue at the end of the day. So yes, sorry, go ahead.
One more tab that I'm going to click here just before we move on that's still in the distance learning resources is dealing with digital distraction. And I'm not going to belabor this, but I just want to point out that this resource is also in the live binder, and it's tips for managing digital distraction in the classroom. But some of these tips, the setting of boundaries for device use in the classroom you can also set boundaries for at home. And in Catholic schools, we're great with partnering with parents. If the parent is the primary educator there and they have their student at home, we can also set boundaries with the parents, let them know what is appropriate and what is expected, and then they can help us out with that. So dealing with digital distraction, extremely important at this moment in time, again, whether they're in the classroom or at home.
Absolutely. You should see in the high school environment, you know, kids they're attached to their phones. They're constantly being distracted by notifications. I'm surprised more of them don't walk into trees as they're crossing campus, to be honest.
All right, so I've clicked over to student engagement now, and I'm just going to give you a quick look at a resource that is here. That's called, Does My Student Have a Learning Disability? And this is not, and I want to be real careful with this is not meant to be used as a diagnostic tool, right? We always tell our interventionists and our classroom teachers, you never want to try to, diagnose a student on your own. However, those are the people who spend their time observing the student experiencing the struggles of the student. And so a resource such as this, where there's a checklist of items, and I'm just going to scroll down here so that you can see what is on the list. We've got the auditory processing and dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyslexia, language processing, nonverbal learning disabilities, visual, ADHD, dyspraxia, and executive functioning deficits, because some of these ADHD, executive functioning, they can be part of something else, or they can look like something else. Sometimes even, dyslexia sometimes can look like an executive functioning issue. Sometimes you've got executive functioning and ADHD as part of a student on the autism spectrum. So noticeably here, the autism spectrum is not on this list. It's much more complex than anything you can put on a little checklist like this, but we'll get into that in just a moment. But I just wanted to show you that that is something that's available. And again, teachers may experience more difficulty with trying to navigate student difficulties when they are at home online, but there are still things that they can observe and experience with them. So let's go into the Exceptional Learners tab. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Autism Spectrum Disorders. Okay.
Great. And there you'll see within the Exceptional Learners tab, when you click on any of those challenges that are highlighted on in those subtabs, such as autism spectrum disorder or dyslexia or any of the others, our landing page tells you a little bit more about the prevalence of each of these learning challenges. So you kind of have an idea of that, as we were saying earlier, the high incidence, what you could likely expect to find on your campus. And I would guarantee you likely have some students who are on the autism spectrum on your campus right now. Mm-hmm. And they're likely doing just fine. And your teachers may be observing all of these unique qualities and wonderful gifts that they have to share to the class. So we're going to look at 10 things every teacher should know about autism, and not really talk about each one in great detail, but it is a nice handy list. First and foremost, if you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. It is a spectrum disorder. So you will find unique characteristics related to language, related to sensory, related to attention, related to knowledge, all along that spectrum. And each student is very much unique. So we encourage you to not say to a family, oh, your child has autism. I'm sorry, we don't have children with autism on our campus, or we can't accommodate that learning difference. I bet you perhaps could. It's all about that conversation and getting to know that unique child that is expressing participation within your community. So each one is unique. Each one has their own strengths and weaknesses, just like every other child in the classroom. So it's all about getting to know what their unique needs are. And again, through universal design, being able to meet them where they're at. Oftentimes, children with autism have special interests. They may be fascinated by space and astronomy and be able to tell you all about the planets. And don't make the mistake of calling Pluto a planet, because they will call you out on that. But this can be a great asset and a tool to use for motivation. Again, it goes to engagement, right? We want to learn all about these special interests and use that to pique interest in other related content areas as well. Sensory issues are fairly common with students on the autism spectrum. It may look like difficulties with handling certain textures of foods, temperature in the classroom, loud noises. In our live binder, you'll find a great resource for some assistive technology or accessibility items that you can keep in the classroom. For example, having a set of noise cancellation headphones is a great thing to have on hand in the event of a lockdown drill or a fire drill where there's a loud, unexpected noise. And those can really make the sensory environment much more easily navigated for students with autism. So lastly, students with autism can have difficulty reading social cues. So no matter the campus, elementary through high school, there's always a hidden curriculum, the social rules that students need to learn to navigate and explore. And that can be very challenging for a student on the autism spectrum. So you want to ensure that experiences can be created in a very organic way, but facilitating what those rules are, even for just lining up and following routines in the classroom or sitting with friends at lunch, being able to engage in team or group activities in special area classes such as PE. That's all really good things to maybe teach a little bit more explicitly for that child. So, and you'll find lots more resources on autism there.
So another tab, the other tab I just clicked here, materials and tools for students with ASD. These are actual physical tools that can be used to help students, whether they have sensory issues, focus issues, just various things that have worked. So a Velcro tape is one thing that can be used to help students with sensory input issues. So whether putting it on the bottom of a chair, underneath of a desk, even on the side of a laptop, if they're bringing a laptop or an iPad back and forth to school, or if that's what they have at home and they're moving around the house with it, put it on the side of the device so that they have it when they need it. Using weighted lap pads, perhaps not weighted blankets, but weighted lap pads are very helpful for littles. Very important to communicate with parents about why you would be using that in the classroom. I've seen parents get sensitive about that. So you want to be careful with communicating if you're using any of these tools, actually. Noise canceling headphones, as Crystal just mentioned, can save the day for students that might have a sensory meltdown midday that might ruin their day. So just having if they've got audio issues and noise canceling headphones on hand, they're a lifesaver. Wobble cushions and core wobble seats are both helpful for students with ADHD and autism. There's an energy balance that is needed in many of the students, particularly ADHD. And when they can move and they can focus that energy in a place in their body, then their mind can actually focus, and these help with that. The time timer that we discussed earlier, that is a picture of a time timer, and the red runs out. So it gives the students a visual of the time running out, which is different than just like a digital clock that's running down. So that's what those tools are. And we are going to jump over to dyslexia here just really quickly, because there's one item that we'd like you to know about. The dyslexia tab, first of all, there's a video here in green. I highly recommend that you use that video, share it out, watch it. It's about 4 minutes long and is an excellent explanation of the dyslexic brain. So that is there. And let's see, font for dyslexia just came up. So this is something that teachers can use, again, with students who are on devices now. This particular font can be used. It helps students to be able to read, and it's based on the way the letters are formed. This is something that, again, you can engage parents. They can purchase it and download it on the student's device, or teachers can use it, because your neurotypical students or students who are not dyslexic can also read the font, but it's very helpful for students with dyslexia. Mm-hmm. So we are going to stop there. I know that we're getting short on time. There's so much more in here that you're welcome to explore, but this is just, tip of the iceberg. Browsing the table of contents might be helpful to you to help you familiarize yourself with what is available, what's in there. Most of the things we talked about today are in the bright green tabs, and there is no password. I want to jump over the TED Talks. I talked about the TED Talks earlier, and the myth of average is bright green there as well. Crystal, you want to close it out for us?
Sure. So, at your level of leadership, whether at the superintendent level, assistant superintendent, or principal, we want you to understand that inclusion is messy and it doesn't always happen right the first time you try. And that's okay. It's okay. Leaders need to assure their teachers, if they have a student with a learning disability in their classroom, that we have resources. We know from a disposition standpoint, this is what we need to do as a Catholic school. We're going to help you gain the knowledge that you need to understand the child's learning difference and the skills that you need in order to provide them a meaningful, enriching, and amazing Catholic education. So those resources are definitely in the live binder here, but a lot of that does go back to mindset, right where we started at the beginning of our session, knowing that you can do it, and that the families and the children that we serve in our Catholic schools are they're meant to be with us. All of these students with different learning challenges, they're meant to be with us. We're the right place for them. So we really thank you for your time.
Thank you for all you do, particularly at this moment in time. I know how challenging leadership is right now, so thank you for everything you do, and thanks for everything you do for your students, and thanks for joining us today.